Okay, Rockfin, I am waiting on you. Okay.
Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
All right. Happy Monday, guys. I hope you had a great weekend. I did. I spent some time in Vermont. It was very pretty. It's always beautiful up there, but in the fall, it is especially pretty. And I have on my fall colors tonight because fall is my favorite season. So welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And you can catch me here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Quick shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. And let's go ahead and say hello to some people in the chat. Guys, we have a big show tonight. We have a lot of news stories to cover tonight, and we're going to have a lot of guests coming on within the next 2 weeks too. So big things happening. Shout out to Tenzin, says Sabby Sabs, first one here. All right. What's going on? Saul says, I voted, show me the money. Hi, Sabby. Hi. Guys, if you haven't had a chance to do so, please take that poll. I actually had to redo the poll because the other one closed. I don't know. I didn't close it. I don't know what happened there, but anywho, go ahead and take that poll about UBI because we have a story about that tonight. Shout out to the Quantum Alchemist. Yes. Why? Because we live in the 21st century. Automation is a thing. So is growing population. We lacked enough jobs 20 years ago, and it's only getting worse and worse. What's going on? Tulsi Gabbard is a psyop. That name. The issue I have is with cities implementing it and therefore needing more revenue. Needs to be done at the federal level. All right, we're going to get into that tonight. What's going on? Hannah G says Sabby Mondays. Shout out to Lewis, UBI. Yes. Greetings, David says, I hope Bernie doesn't warn us that we need just 2 more Dems again. Like from where? You mean Georgia? Where his good friend Joe lied to the public about 2K. That's right. We will not forget. Shout out to Jay says, UB do. What's going on? Eric T. Red, who's a Sabby member, says, happy Monday, all lefty friends. Greetings, Sean says, yo. Shout out to CBC Voter, says, happy Monday, Sabby Sabs. What's going on? Rick says, hey, y'all. Shout out to Steve, says, hello, everyone. Greetings, Miguel says, peace. What's going on? Peggy says, happy Monday, everyone. Greetings, Gamer says, hello. Shout out to Mario. AOC finally coming out as the neo-lib she really is. Yeah. She's making herself look worse. I just saw the exchange that she has on Instagram as well. It's wow. Oh dear. What's going on? Jared Brown says, easy poll to answer, Sabrina. All right. Greetings, Notori says, a celebration and fire. Shout out to Nixie Pixie, who's a Sabby member, says, definitely yes. What's going on? MPLS 612. Rather watch Sabby than Jimmy. Oh, MPLS. Some people are watching both of us right now. I still don't know how you guys do that. I don't know. My attention span, I couldn't, but some people can. What's going on, creative experiments? Don't let libertarians tell you UBI creates inflation. Inflation doesn't matter as long as wages keep up. We're going to have an interesting discussion about this tonight. What's going on, Anthony? Sites do not create. Oh, sorry, cities. Blah. Cities do not create the currency, so cities should not be funding it. Implementation is a discussion, though. Interesting. What's going on? Duncan says, finally making it for a live stream. Woo! That's right, Duncan. Welcome. Shout out to Prep the Polish. Kyle recently made a video attacking the protest. I know everybody keeps talking about that. Attacking the protesters that called out AOC. Yeah, I know. CJ over at RBN did a response to that video. If you haven't checked that out, check it out. I think that was the other night. That was last night. He did that video where he was also talking about the comments that Kyle has in that video. So yikes. Interesting discussion. All right, guys, let's go ahead and give a quick shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and the ultimate. All of their names are listed here. And at some point, I'm going to figure out a better presentation for this because, yeah, I don't know. I think I can do this better. Maybe I'll ask someone else to do this to make it prettier. I don't know. But yes, thank you guys so much for your support. And I want to give a special shout out to a new Sabby patron. We call them newbies. Let's give a shout out to Jody Broomlev Hovel. Thank you. Thank you so much. And welcome, Jody. And all of their names are scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So let's go ahead and get into our stories tonight. What are we talking about tonight? I have 5 stories because a lot happened over the weekend. And one of them I had to put off to tomorrow night because something else came out about that story today. So there's a lot going on. But tonight we are discussing Professor Richard Wolff debunks myth. Yes, Richard Wolff is going to debunk this myth that people have about socialism versus capitalism. That's an interesting discussion. And we're going to discuss the Georgia race alert. We're going to talk about what happened with Walker and, oh, shoot, I forgot his name already. Warnock, sorry. We're going to talk about what happened to that and what voters are saying in response to that and where that looks like the Democratic Party may be heading. We're also going to discuss Bernie Sanders' warning. And he is giving a warning to the Democratic Party. Will they listen to him? Probably not. We're also going to discuss justice for Jaheim. If you have not heard about what happened to the 15-year-old boy in Mississippi, you're going to hear about that tonight. And we're also going to discuss LA UBI. That's right. So go ahead and take that poll if you didn't have a chance to do so. I want to see where you guys stand on this. But yes, that is actually happening in the City of Angels. So I can't wait to get into that discussion. Now we're going to start off with this Georgia Senate race. So we're going to start off with, I have a couple of clips here. The first clip is going to be a summary of what happened during that debate. And then I want to talk about how some of the voters who saw the debate, how they feel. And I got to tell you, if you're a Republican or a Democrat, it doesn't look good either way in reference to this debate that happened recently. So let's go ahead and dive into a quick summary about that debate.
Major Senate races with the midterms just over 3 weeks away, a race that could determine control of the Senate. Republican Herschel Walker and Democrat Raphael Warnock going head to head in a fiery debate. ABC's Alex Prochet joins us with the highlights from Atlanta. Good morning, Alex.
Morning, Eva. The stakes going into this debate between Senator Warnock and Republican nominee Herschel Walker were incredibly high. Right now is the only time the two are scheduled to share the stage, and the party that wins this seat could very well control the Senate. The two debated key midterm issues, the economy and inflation. Walker going on the offensive early, doing his best to link Warnock and President Biden. The senator in his hometown of Savannah last night tried to engage voters across the state, touting his upbringing and his faith. But in many ways, this debate was unorthodox. At one point, during a tense exchange over policing, Walker got reprimanded for using a prop. He pulled out a police badge. In another instance, Walker quoted scripture telling Warnock, who's also a reverend, not to bear false witness. And that's something that clearly got under Warnock's skin. But this debate was defined by personal issues. Warnock answering allegations he hasn't paid adequate child support, acknowledging he went through a divorce, but saying his relationship with his two children is strong. And then, amid all the controversy surrounding Herschel Walker going into the debate, Walker again denied allegations by a woman who claimed she became pregnant with his child and that he paid for an abortion. Now, recent polling shows that the issues Georgia voters find most pressing right now are inflation, abortion, and then election laws.
Let's go ahead and pause there for just a second, because this is going to actually take us into the Bernie Sanders story after I show you the other clips as well. This idea that the Democratic Party believes is going to help them win in the midterms is that they're really running on the overturn of Roe v. Wade, right? And I told you guys a couple months ago when that overturn happened that I still did not believe that that was going to be the driving force to really bring a lot of voters out. And I could be wrong, but that's just what I feel. I have that feeling. Notice the reporter here said the number one issue is inflation/economy. And this is actually what I feel the Democratic Party should be putting their number one energy and focus into. Now, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, so if the Democrats fail, oh well. If the Republicans fail, oh well. I'm 100% pro third party or independent candidates. But this is something that I have noticed. The Democratic Party tends to try to run on the culture war issue. Now, this is not to say that abortion is not important. This is not to say that a woman's right to choose is not important. But the fact that they are willing to make that the number one issue to run on and they fundraise off of it after the overturn, instead of putting more focus and attention into the economy and inflation right now, that is going to be troublesome for them. Because at the end of the day, if you're still suffering financially because of gas prices, because of food prices, which I know some of the gas prices have decreased, but for some people, they really have not. People have sent me pictures of what gas is in California. People are paying like $7 a gallon at the pump. I go to the grocery store, so I know the food prices are still expensive. So people are still hurting economically. This is not something that the Democratic Party can sit back and just pretend like this is not a number one issue. It is a number one issue. This is affecting the majority of people in the United States, those of us that are not a part of the 1%. And that includes middle-class people as well. So what they are doing in response is they're heavily preaching about the Inflation Reduction Act. President Joe Biden was just tweeting about this recently, saying, we help the American people because we passed the Inflation Reduction Act. But that act actually doesn't address and fix the inflation issues. It's just a name that was basically painted over Build Back Better and was scaled down even more to make Americans believe that something is being done about inflation and about the economy. It's not the way that it should be, and people are still suffering because of that. So the response, I feel, should not be, well, we passed the Inflation Reduction Act. If people are telling you that they are still struggling economically and that they are suffering and that they cannot afford these grocery store prices, your response should be, how do we fix this? Not, well, we passed the Inflation Reduction Act. And they know that's not enough. And they know that didn't fix it. So I think the biggest mistake that the Democratic Party is making right now is they are not making the economy their number one issue. And when you look at the polls of voters, the number one issue for them is the economy and the inflation. So if they lose, you'll know why.
Janae?
And those voters heading to the polls soon, Alex. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, so that is just a quick summary there of the debate. It was pretty cringe. I couldn't watch the whole thing, to be honest with you. But I'm going to show you a couple of responses from people who were at the watch party. So debates sometimes have watch parties that you can attend. And yes, I know it's Chris Cuomo. Yes, he has a whole new news channel or whatever. I'm really not here for him. We're here for this clip because I want you to hear what a member of the Working Families Party is going to say about this debate. Listen to this, and then I'm going to tell you something that I think is a big flaw with the Working Families Party.
Here from Herschel Walker again under the examination of Leland Vittert. Now, Mr. Mayor, after everything you got to observe, including the interview, how do you feel about who's the right man for Georgia?
It makes me happy that I'm a member of the Working Families Party. I was actually a little disappointed by both candidates, but I am the mayor of Atlanta's Twin Cities, South Fulton, and you know, too often in our politics, we're divided, we're segregated in our political corners. So many of these debate parties I've attended, I'm surrounded by people who agree with me. We're all clapping at the same things, but to be in this diverse audience and see people clapping at things that I absolutely would not clap at, it really sparked some courageous conversations. And I think that I talk about this all the time in our city council meetings, even at the city council level, people tend to just only talk with people with whom they agree. And so these kinds of courageous conversations that we're having tonight, I would love to see them happen, you know, not just at debate watch parties, but
Be careful with that one, because once you start telling people you need to talk to people that you don't agree with, people are going to start calling you a Russian apologist. People are going to call you Red Brown Alliance, like they call some of us over at RBN. Be careful with that, Mr. Mayor. But you notice he's from the Working Families Party, and he said that basically he wasn't satisfied with either candidate. This isn't the first time. This has been a recurring theme with these candidates that have come out in the past couple of years. When you look at Hillary and Trump, what was a lot of responses from people? I'm not happy with either one. I don't want to vote for either one, right? This is something that pleads the case more for third party or independent candidates. But there's a flaw with the Working Families Party. Listen to what he says here.
But I would say that I wish that there were going to be more debates with these candidates, because I think that they both could sharpen their messages a bit more.
But if you had to vote, like let's say Monday, when early voting starts, Working Families Party is usually closely aligned with the Democratic Party. Is Raphael Warnock deserving of your vote after tonight?
I would vote for Raphael Warnock. I don't think he's quite earned my. There were times where I honestly did feel he was not as candid as I wanted him to be, and not as strong as I wanted him to be speaking on issues with working families. I don't think you need to.
This is a problem with the Working Families Party. He just told you in the beginning that he wasn't satisfied with either candidate. He's telling you now that if he still had to choose, he would still pick Warnock. Then he goes on to explain to you that he's still not satisfied. He's not satisfied, particularly with his response to working families, but you're a part of the Working Families Party. So one of the criticisms that I have for the Working Families Party is that it's basically just a vote blue, no matter who organization. And I saw this happen a couple of months ago with a progressive candidate who was running through the Democratic Party, Imani Oakley. She was the progressive candidate. She was the working class candidate. And the Working Families Party endorsed the corporate opponent over her. And she's not the first one that's happened to. When she called it out on Twitter. Christine Olivio, when she attended that panel that Marianne Williamson had where they were introducing all these progressive candidates, Christine Olivio was the only one who had the audacity to say that some of these progressive organizations that are supposed to be supporting these grassroots campaigns are backing corporate candidates. That's a flaw with the Working Families Party. Because if you call yourself the Working Families Party, you should be supporting and you should be backing working families and these working class candidates that are running. If you are going to bail out in the end and tell people you're endorsing the corporate candidate, or to tell the voters to go ahead and vote for the corporate candidate, then you are just a Democratic organization. That's it. And I know people see this, some see it as like a separate party, but at the end of the day, they tell you to vote blue no matter who. So I have a lot of criticisms for the Working Family Party. So he's showing you that here. He's showing you that right here. And Chris Cuomo just told you Working Families Party is closely aligned with the DNC. Do you see the problem? So these other organizations, when people tell me we have other parties that you should mention too, not just Green Party, not just the Libertarian parties and things like that. And people will mention Working Families Party. And I don't mention Working Families Party because it's really not a separate party. It is a party that tells you to vote for the Democrat candidates. That's what they tell you to do. Now, if the Working Families Party was like a third party, its own thing, that would be a different story. But this flaw right here, what he just said to you, that tells you everything you need to know about the Working Families Party. At the end of the day, he's still going to vote blue no matter who, even though he just told you that Warnock is not really going well for working families, but you're part of the Working Families Party. So you're voting against your own interest. That makes no sense. It's the same thing with these Justice Democrats. It's the same thing. If at the end of the day, you are still going to vote for the corporate Democrat, then you are voting against your own interests because those corporate Democrats are not going to put forth those progressive policies. Don't believe me? Look around. Do we have any of them implemented now? Let's go on.
Run from if you're voting with Biden, don't run from that. Yeah. If you think that we need more opportunities, don't run from that. Hearing his answer about his churches evicting people, it made me a little queasy.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate you.
Warnock's church is evicting people, but he's still willing to vote for him. Now I have another clip here because we're going to talk about where the Democratic Party stands with the black vote. So I want to give a shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. And this is a watch party that was held at Morehouse College. I want you to hear what's said here about that same debate coming from the voters. Listen to this.
The one thing that kept emerging is that a lot of these young people don't have confidence in the political system, period, Democrats or Republicans. They feel one side is actually hostile to them and the other side takes them for granted. And so I think the biggest takeaway from all this last night or in the weeks past is that the Democrats, need to be listening to these young people who are saying, come to our communities, hear our voices. And one young man said last night that, neither of these parties were really built to support black people in this country. Both of them have roots in white supremacy. And he said that's the fundamental issue for them politically to engage with the system. And so whether they have faith and confidence that politics can, measurably shape their lives in meaningful ways or the community's lives in meaningful ways, they don't have a lot of confidence.
That's hard to hear, but certainly understandable at this point.
The one thing that kept emerging is that
this is how the younger people are waking up.
A lot of these young people don't have confidence in the political system, period, Democrats or Republicans. They feel one side is actually hostile to them and the other side takes them for granted.
And this is what I've been telling people because my students were that age group and they felt the same way for the most part. They felt the same way. They're able to see it earlier on. I wish I would have seen it as early as they did, to be honest with you. But they're able to see, like, you know what? The Republican Party doesn't, like us. They're hostile toward us. But at the same time, the Democratic Party isn't really trying to do anything to improve our communities. Neither one of these parties actually really care about the people. Younger people are waking up to that.
I think the biggest takeaway from all this last night or in the weeks past is that the Democrats, need to be listening to these young people who are saying, come to our communities, hear our voices. And one young man said last night that, neither of these parties were really built to support the black people in this country.
Neither of these parties were built to support black people in this country.
Them have roots in white supremacy. And he said that's the fundamental issue for them politically to engage with the system. And so whether they have faith and confidence that politics can, measurably shape their lives in meaningful ways or the community's lives in meaningful ways, they don't have a lot of confidence.
They don't have a lot of confidence. These are no longer the days of 2008 when Barack Obama was running for president, where Barack Obama really appealed to that demographic. Those college kids, he really appealed to them, particularly African-American college students. Those days are gone. So you can't have someone in office like a Barack Obama who ran on a lot of hope and change, who mobilized a lot of young people, particularly young African-Americans who believed in him, to come out and support him, and then have 2 consecutive presidential terms and not deliver really for young people or for African Americans. And then you have the great new hope come through, which was Bernie Sanders, and watching him get cheated and watching the DNC work actively against him, even though he was running in the same party. And then you have the squad, who does manage to break through and get in, and then you see them not really fighting for these progressive issues that they ran on. So younger people are not as easily swayed. Now, some pundits will come to you and they will tell you, well, they don't come out and vote anyway. They came out and voted for Obama. A lot of young people showed up for Bernie Sanders in 2016. Maybe not as many in 2020, but a lot showed up in 2016. So young people can come out, but you have to actually run on issues that excite them. You have to run on issues that they can actually relate to. A lot of times these politicians are not speaking to younger people. So younger people don't come out and vote because there's no cause that really is investing in them. So they are waking up. Now I want you to listen to what this gentleman said as well in reference to this debate.
One theme kept emerging in my conversation with these young people: hypocrisy. That there seems to be this endemic hypocrisy baked into the political system, especially when it comes to conservatives like Herschel Walker. But they said it seems to be like it's just team. It doesn't matter. The facts don't matter. Your past behavior doesn't matter. You can just say whatever you want for the team. Let's take a listen.
With regard to Herschel Walker, I kind of had a general understanding of that he was, a black man who was sort of Republican and things like that. But actually seeing him speak definitely made me more confident about supporting Warnock.
I'm not necessarily moved from voting for Warnock. It was never in question whether I would vote for him or not. But what I am hesitant about is my approach to voting in general going into these next 4 years.
Did you guys just hear that? Because what they're talking about here, and they mentioned the hypocrisy. So this piece is important. Young people are seeing the hypocrisy with both parties.
Kept emerging in my conversation with these young people: hypocrisy. That there seems to be this endemic hypocrisy baked into the political system, especially when it comes to conservatives like Herschel Walker. But they said it seems to be like it's just team. It doesn't matter. The facts don't matter. Your past behavior doesn't matter. You can just say whatever you want for the team. Let's take a listen.
I think when we talk about this team aspect in reference to politics, one of the things I did notice from my students is that, individualism is being embraced again. They didn't seem as quick to jump onto a team. People have like their own opinions and they're proud of that. So when you see that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are basically just playing for the team and they're not really playing for the people and fighting for the people, eventually you get tired of it and it makes you apathetic. It makes you not want to even go out and vote. Just as this gentleman will go on to say here.
With regard to Herschel Walker, I kind of had a general understanding of that he was, a black man who was sort of Republican and things like that. But actually seeing him speak definitely made me more confident about supporting Warnock.
I'm not necessarily moved from voting for Warnock. It was never in question whether I would vote for him or not. But what I am hesitant about is my approach to voting in general going into these next 4 years.
Hesitant about voting going into the next 4 years or next 2 years. And he's not alone. The majority of Americans don't vote. I mean, the turnout, the reason why we have high turnout with certain elections is because of fear mongering. That's a big part of it, right? Or there is a candidate that really mobilizes and excites people like Obama did, right? So when you have two candidates that don't really mobilize and excite people, which apparently Warnock and Herschel Walker aren't doing either one, this race shouldn't even be close. Because you have Warnock who's already in office. So he's the incumbent. This race shouldn't even be as close as it is. But it is because both of these candidates are not that great. So we're seeing a lot of this. And if you see they're playing these team politics and you see that both parties have a lot of hypocrisy, this is what happens. You get people that will just tell you, I'm kind of hesitant about voting at all. I really believe within the next decade, voter turnout is going to decrease and continue to decrease if something doesn't change, at least for this two-party system. And what was sad to me listening to this discussion is that not once was the other option even presented to them or mentioned. Not once were they asked, well, what do you think about if someone were to run third party? What do you think about if there was an independent candidate? What do you think about that? They're never even presented with the other option. And this is the big part of the problem. This is why people stay stuck in this two-party system, because they're not even being told, let's do something different. And we need to hear that. Now it's mainstream media. So of course, they're not going to recommend that to them. And this is why independent media is so important. This is why we have to reach more people so that we can tell them to do this. We need to get more people to vote third party and independent. And I know a lot of people say third party independent is not viable, but why are they not viable? Part of the reason is because people don't vote for them because people don't know about them, or people are told you have to vote Democrat or Republican. We need to change that. If you look at other countries, you look at the UK, they have multiple parties. You look at Canada, they have multiple parties. This is not a new or weird thing for them. It's only weird and newish in the United States. Here where people are told, well, if you vote for them, then that's a vote for Trump or that's a vote for so-and-so. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, let me go ahead and finish this clip here.
For these young Morehouse students, this debate was a very clarifying moment for many of them who they weren't really aware of Herschel Walker's past. They don't remember him like we do as a great football player. And last night, it was just a clarifying moment. They see clearly who this man is.
Yeah, and not only that, the fact that they may not recognize that he was a great football player, I particularly don't think they really care if he was a great football player. Like, that's the thing. I don't think they are where some of us may be with that. Oh, well, so-and-so used to play football. So-and-so used to be on this TV show. I don't think they're really interested in all of that from talking to them. Carlos said, if you're voting for Democrats on the Roe versus Wade issue, you're being played for a fool. Make no mistake, the Republicans and the Democrats don't care about you. They're in cahoots to screw you over. 100%. Thank you so much for the super chat, JM. Lawrence, Dems and Republicans will never get my vote again. Rick says they speak in revolution, but govern in neo-lib reform. Don't fall for it, folks. That's right. Rick also says voting for war, voting for apartheid, voting for regime change. Where's the votes for healthcare, housing, and peace? That's right. MJ, only a small percent of people are politically engaged. That too. Bad cookies. Sabby, we have even better system. We have one mega party with two wings. It's a big tent. Let me know if there's anything on Rockfin as well, Eric. Yeah, so it's just, this has to be embarrassing for the Democratic Party. Like I said, this race shouldn't even be as close as it is. I don't think Warnock was particularly a strong candidate to begin with when he ran 2 years ago. I think that what really pushed him up and over the edge was Joe Biden telling people, if you put them through, you'll get that 2K stimulus. And Stacey Abrams going around mobilizing non-voters and telling them you got to come out and support them. But how's Stacey Abrams doing right now? Because from what I saw, Brian, the incumbent governor, is wiping the floor with her in the polls. So this is what I'm saying. People showed out based on fear. People came out in large numbers because of fear. And that fear for a lot of people was Trump. People don't seem to have as much of that fear anymore. Now you're going to see the voter. I guarantee you, we'll see when the numbers come through, but I guarantee you they will not have the turnout like they did last time in Georgia. Bad cookies. I hope Sabby knew that the comment she read was sarcasm. Yeah, I know. All right, let me take that comment on Rockfin. Thank you so much for the tip on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. To remove the first layer of blockage, party abolition is needed. If more and more of us, especially Black people, start filling as registered independents, filing as registered independents, then we will overwhelm the election infrastructure that's in charge of elections and responsible for vote counting in our state. Then elected in state houses, state offices, federal houses, and eventually president. Let the cats take over the cattle and dog fail us. Thank you so much for that tip, Roger. Now, this leads me into our second story, which is about Bernie Sanders. Now, Bernie Sanders is here trying to give a warning to the Democratic Party about what they're focusing on versus what they should be focusing on. Again, do I think that they will necessarily listen to Bernie Sanders? Probably not. But let's go through this clip here. There's parts here where I want to chime in, but let's go through this and I want you to hear what he has to say.
Senator Sanders is with us. Thanks so much for joining us. Tell us why you think that's a mistake.
Well, Jake, first of all, I happen to believe that the Supreme Court decision overturning Roe versus Wade is an absolute outrage. I think Democrats have got to fight to make sure that it is women who control their own bodies, not the government. So I think this is a very important issue. But I don't believe it can be the only issue. At a time when we have an economy in which the wealthiest people, the billionaire class, are getting much, much richer while working people are struggling to put food on the table, it goes without saying that we have got to focus on the economy and demand that we have a government that works for all of us and not just wealthy campaign contributors.
John, to Emily Transition Vlog, you said exactly what I was about to say. Hit that like button, guys. That helps me out with the algorithm there. But you said exactly what I was about to say. It's too late. It's too late. It is October 17th. November's just around the corner. Now, Bernie Sanders said that he doesn't think abortion should be the only issue. Now, watch, some people are going to come and they're going to say, oh, there goes Bernie Sanders being misogynistic, not caring about women's issues. No. But it's too late. Where was this months ago? You see what I mean? You wait until October and say, now we need to be focusing on the economy and working class people's struggles and needs and what working class people need in this country. Where have you been all this time? Where have all of them been all this time? The Democratic Party made a big mistake. The moment that overrule was announced and they sent out text messages to people, and I got one of them, text messages to people asking to donate because they just overturned Roe v. Wade. Why do I need to donate to you? Because of what the Supreme Court did. Why do I need to donate to you when you had decades to codify Roe v. Wade into law and you sat on it? People point to Barack Obama didn't have the votes. Ro Khanna said that when I interviewed him, right? But Ro Khanna also told you that they should have abolished the filibuster. So why didn't they do that? So the fact that they actually had the nerve to ask the American people for money during a time where we were struggling with inflation and the gas prices were still astronomically high, they had the nerve to ask us for money. You should have been giving us money. They should have been giving us money to help us with the inflation. But they're giving money to another country instead. People losing their jobs, people can't pay their rent, and they had the nerve to ask us to give money to them. It makes no sense. None. They even gave it a name. They said we're calling it Rovember. The fuck? You got a hashtag going now? You trying to make money off of this? This is going to be our card in our back pocket. This is how we're going to win in the midterms because we failed with everything else over the past year and a half. We failed with everything else, but we got them with the Roe issue. So they're going to come out and support us. It's not necessarily looking that way. But this is what they wanted. They thought this is their golden ticket to bring the voters to come out, and decided we'll just pass this Inflation Reduction Act to make it look like we're doing something for inflation, which we went over that bill, which does not address inflation at all. Just steadily trying to fool the American people as if people can't look at their own bank accounts and see what's really happening. Big mistake. Huge.
And the irony here is Republicans say, they talk about the economy. Really, not one of them is going to vote to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Not one of them is going to vote for legislation that makes it easier for workers to join unions. Mm-hmm. Not one of them is going to vote to do what every other major country on earth does and guarantee health care for all people, nor will they vote to raise taxes on billionaires at a time when the richest people in this country, in some cases, pay nothing in federal income tax. So I happen to think.
So listen to what Bernie Sanders said, because he's basically calling himself out here when he says not one of them. Listen to this.
We've got to focus on the economy and demand that we have a government that works for all of us and not just wealthy campaign contributors. And the irony here is Republicans say, they talk about the economy. Really, not one of them is going to vote to raise the minimum wage to a living wage.
Pause. Now he's talking about Republicans. Not one of them is going to vote to raise the living wage to the minimum wage to a living wage. He's right. But what about those 8 Democrats that voted against the $15 minimum wage increase, Bernie Sanders? See, this is the thing with people like Bernie and the other progressives in DC. It's easy for them to call out the Republicans not supporting progressive policies. When are they going to call out the Democrats not supporting progressive policies? And I don't mean just Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. They were not the only ones who were against that $15 minimum wage increase. They were not the only ones. There were 8 Democrats in the Senate who voted against it. Or one independent who caucuses with Democrats. So we're going to call him a Democrat too. So this is Bernie Sanders. See what I said? It's easy to be left when you criticizing the right. But he did this to himself here. He pointed out that specific example to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. And you need to call this out too, Bernie. You sit right in the Senate. You need to call out those 8 senators who voted against the $15 minimum wage. But he's not going to do that. This is that team politics that we were just talking about from the previous story. He's not going to call out the Democrats who are also against it too, because that's his team. There's more.
Not one of them is going to vote for legislation that makes it easier for workers to join unions. Not one of them is going to vote to do what every other major country on earth does and guarantee health care for all people.
Guarantee health care for all people. Again, he's talking about the Republicans. Not one of them is going to vote to guarantee health care for all people. Didn't Ro Khanna say that they don't even have the votes in the House to pass Medicare for all, Bernie? Democrats control the House. The majority of the Democrats don't want it either, Bernie Sanders. You going to call that out? Nancy Pelosi doesn't want Medicare for all. And she's the speaker. This is where they go wrong. You know how you say this speech, how you correct this? You say, look, when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, we're looking at the Republicans, we're looking at the Democrats. Neither one of these parties right now wants to support this, and this. Bernie Sanders isn't doing that. Bernie Sanders is sitting right here right now. And I feel like he's really gaslighting the people because he's sitting here and he's making you think that it's just the Republicans that don't want to do it. And he's not calling out the fact that the Democrats, the majority of them there, don't want to do it either. That is not cool. That is wrong. And if you're new and you don't know, I heavily supported Bernie Sanders. Heavily. And I donated a lot of money to Bernie Sanders. And when Bernie Sanders told you to vote for Joe Biden before he even suspended his campaign, that right there let me know exactly who Bernie Sanders really was. And I wish I would have caught on earlier. Some people caught on 2016. What does that tell you? This is Bernie Sanders playing team politics. I can't believe it. He's not even going to mention that these Democrats also don't want to support Medicare for all. If they did, and the commentator here, I would interrupt and say, well, if that's the case, Bernie Sanders, do you mean the Democrats would support Medicare for all? Because if that's the case, why hasn't your bill been brought to the floor for a vote? Because you don't have the votes because they don't support it. If it was that necessary, if Bernie feels that way, why didn't Bernie Sanders urge and encourage the squad members to force the vote for Medicare for all, which is a DSA policy? Why didn't he ask them to do that? Let's think about this, guys. We know they like Bernie. We know they'll listen to someone like Bernie. Why didn't Bernie Sanders tell the squad members to go ahead and force the vote?
Will they vote to raise taxes on billionaires at a time when the richest people in this country, in some cases, pay nothing in federal income tax?
And some of the Democrats who are there in the House and in the Senate will not vote to raise taxes on the billionaires either. These issues that he is talking about are problems on both sides, not just with the Republican Party. If it wasn't a problem on both sides, we would have passed it already.
I happen to think the Republican line is phony, and Democrats have got to respond.
So might the concern be among Democratic strategists that, hey, Democrats are the party in power, underlying the economic problems that you just underlined? might be underlying the failure of the Democratic Party, which controls the House, the Senate, and the White House, to deliver.
Well, that's simply just not accurate. The truth is that inflation, which is a very serious problem in our country, is a global problem.
No. He's talking about the failure of the Democratic Party to deliver.
Among Democratic strategists that, hey, Democrats are the party in power. Underlying the economic problems that you just underlined might be underlying the failure of the Democratic Party, which controls the House, the Senate, and the White House, to deliver.
Well, that's simply just not accurate.
It is accurate. All of those policies, those issues that Bernie Sanders brought up, has not been, none of them, not one has been delivered by the Democratic Party. Not one of the policies that Bernie Sanders mentioned to you. Not one. So yes, you have failed to deliver. You are the party in power. Now, this is Bernie Sanders running cover for the Democratic Party. You see how this goes? Oh, my goodness.
Truth is that inflation, which is a very serious problem in our country, is a global problem.
What does inflation have to do with the Democrats in the House and the Senate passing those policies that you just mentioned? Not one. Not one.
In the UK and in Europe, in many cases, it is worse than it is here in the United States. So to blame Joe Biden for it just doesn't make any sense at all.
So now he's going to do the global comparison. In the UK and other countries, the inflation is worse than it is here in the United States. Newsflash, in the UK, everybody have health care. In some of these other countries like Germany, they have free college. They have health care. They have the things that we're fighting to get. You see the problem? So yes, their inflation may be higher, but they have free health care, Bernie. We have inflation and we don't have free health care. And we have to pay for the schooling. And we still have a federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. And you have these employees that are being exploited by their employers, which is why you have so many people going on strikes. We can't even give everybody a decent living in the United States. So when people try to make that comparison, and I've seen other people do the same thing, they want to do the global comparison. Well, so-and-so has more inflation than we do. They also have things we don't have that we got to pay out of pocket for to go along with the inflation.
What the inflation crisis is about is broken supply chains. It's the war in Ukraine. And I'll tell you, Jake, what else it's about. It's about the incredible level of corporate greed that we are now seeing. People go to the gas pumps. Prices are very high, lower than they were a while ago, but too high. Understand that the oil companies, the big oil companies, ExxonMobil and the others, are making record-breaking profits. You can't afford prescription drugs? Well, understand that the pharmaceutical industry is making huge profits. Food.
And understand also, Bernie, that both parties accept money and donations from Big Pharma. This is why we don't have Medicare for all.
Industry, huge profits. So in my view, what's been going on is a lot of these large corporations are taking advantage of the terrible war in the Ukraine, taking advantage of the breaks in supply chain, and just raising prices to an outrageous level. And I think we've got to go after them on that.
And since he brought that up, and I wasn't going to be the one to bring that up, but since he brought that up in reference to Russia and Ukraine, when we want to talk about money and we want to talk about the American people struggling to pay for things, but we've seen billions of dollars go out the door to Ukraine. Notice Bernie Sanders doesn't say that, though, because he voted for it. You see it? That make you look kind of bad. Because then if you say that, yeah, you know, we shouldn't have all these billions of dollars going to Ukraine, even though I voted for it. We had the money. Still have the money to help people right here in the United States. But the money is going to other people who don't live here. And Bernie Sanders don't want to mention that because then that makes the Democratic Party and the Biden administration look bad.
What do you make of the argument from Democratic former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, who last year was sounding the alarm about inflation, saying that the government had been pumping too much money into the economy, both during the early days of COVID, starting with Trump and throughout the first year of the Biden administration? He was warning that inflation was going to be really bad, and now he's saying, essentially, I told you so.
Where is this money that they're talking about, ladies and gentlemen? Where is this money? They're talking about those 2 measly stimulus checks that some people didn't even get. Not to mention there were checks sent to dead people. Where's all this money that they're talking about that went into? Who did the money go to? If the money went to us, we wouldn't still be struggling, right?
Yeah, well, I guess he told the government of the UK that, and he told governments all over the world, inflation is a global problem. In many countries, it is worse than it is in the United States. Now, Larry Summers, I know Larry, and does a good job representing his Wall Street interests. But I think it is time we had a government that stood up for working families. And
how long he gonna say this? Bernie Sanders is still making the same argument that he made under the Trump administration today, under the Biden administration. So you have the Democratic Party that is now in control, that's in the White House, but Bernie Sanders is still making the same statements. But yet he claims so much has improved under Joe Biden. He said Joe Biden was doing a good job during that interview that he had with Crystal Ball. If that's true, Bernie, why you still have the same complaints and the same statement that you had when Trump was in office? How much has really changed? How long is he going to make this speech? It's 2022. Bernie Sanders been saying this for how many years now?
questions that we should be asking ourselves is, why do we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs when the pharmaceutical industry makes huge profits? Why are we the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people? Why do you have half of the elderly people in this country earning less than $25,000 a year, and you got Republicans out there who want to cut Social Security, they want to cut Medicare, they want to cut Medicaid so they can give more tax breaks to their billionaire friends?
Yeah. Is anyone going to tell Bernie Sanders that Joe Biden also wanted to cut Social Security? He knows this, right? Why is he pretending like it's only Republicans that want to do that? It's not.
Those are the kinds of issues that we need to be discussing, in my view.
Right, but that's my point. I mean, the issues that you feel passionately about, paid family and medical leave, college affordability, home health care, housing child care assistance, you tried to get all those things done. They got cut from the Democratic proposal. I mean, there are Democrats out there, progressives, who are big Bernie Sanders supporters, who are saying, why should we vote for Democrats? Bernie, you've been fighting a good fight, but all that stuff got stripped from the legislation that passed the House and Senate.
And good question.
Oh, Jake, I didn't know you knew me like that. Jake said we got some progressives out there that are asking, like, all these things were a part of the legislation and it got cut. Why should we support Democrats? Why doesn't Bernie Sanders have that conversation with those people, by the way? I don't really see him going on independent media like that either. I say that about the squad, but let's be real.
Go ahead. All right, Jake, that is an excellent question. And let me give you the simple answer. The simple answer is, with President Biden's strong support, we presented a piece of legislation called Build Back Better, which in many ways would have done more for the working class and the middle class of this country than any legislation passed in the last 50 or 60 years. It was transformative. We had zero Republican support, not one Republican who believed that we should deal with child care, that we should deal with health care, that we should deal with education, not one Republican supporting it. Unfortunately, in a Senate that is 50-50, 50 Republicans, 50 people in the Democratic caucus, there were two corporate Democrats who chose not to support what the president and I and the vast majority of the caucus wanted. That's the reality. We had 48 votes. We couldn't get 50. My hope is that we will
If you look at Jake's face, hold
elect
on.
two more Democrats.
Look at the look on Jake Tapper's face. He's like, I know he does not believe I am buying this. I know he does not believe I am falling for this BS. Now here goes Bernie into his famous line. Here we go.
Education, not one Republican supporting it. Unfortunately, in a Senate that is 50-50, 50 Republicans, 50 people in the Democratic caucus, there were two corporate Democrats who chose not to support what the president and I and the vast majority of the caucus wanted. That's the reality. We had 48 votes. We couldn't get 50. My hope is that we will elect two more Democrats, so we'll have 52 in the Senate so that we can begin to address the long neglected needs of working families. It is just not acceptable that we have.
My hope is to elect two more Democrats, so we'll have 52 in the Senate. Who are the Democrats that are supposed to be coming into the Senate that's going to approve of all these progressive policies? I don't see any. Who are these progressive Democrats who are supposed to be coming in that's going to approve of all of that? Who? And let's say they do. Who's going to be the rotating villain then? You think it's just going to be Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin? I don't believe it's just them, by the way. Who's going to say no then? It'll be someone else. Watch. Watch. Then they'll be like, well, we need to get two more Democrats. The point that Jake Tapper, and I can't believe I'm agreeing with him for once. The point that Jake Tapper is trying to make is that the party is not delivering. It did not deliver on those things, regardless if the Republicans agree with it or not. And Bernie brings up the two corporate Democrats, Sinema and Manchin, but they are a part of that party. And they're not the only corporate Democrats in the Senate. In fact, most of the Democrats in the Senate are corporate. So they're still a part of the party, Bernie Sanders. And that is what Jake Tapper is saying, the party. Now let's go back and hear this because he has not answered his question. Let's go back to here.
Essentially, I told you so.
Yeah, well, I guess he told the government of the UK that, and he told governments all over the world. Inflation is a global.
Not that part. Hold on. Here we go.
Not to guarantee health care to all people. Why do you have half of the elderly people in this country earning less than $25,000 a year, and you got Republicans out so they can give more tax breaks to their billionaire friends? Those are the kinds of issues that we need to be discussing, in my view.
Right, but that's my point. I mean, the issues that you feel passionately about, paid family and medical leave, college affordability, home health care, housing child care assistance, you tried to get all those things done. They got cut from the Democratic proposal. I mean, there are Democrats out there, progressives, who are big Bernie Sanders supporters who are saying, why should we vote for Democrats? Bernie, you've been fighting a good fight, but all that stuff got stripped from the legislation.
The question is, why should we vote for Democrats? For the people who are the progressives.
That passed the House and Senate.
Jake,
and
good question.
Go ahead.
All right, Jake, that is an excellent question. And let me give you the simple answer. The simple answer is, with President Biden's strong support, We presented a piece of legislation called Build Back Better, which in many ways would have done more for the working class and the middle class of this country than any legislation passed in the last 50 or 60 years. It was transformative. We had zero Republican support, not one Republican who believed that we should deal with child care, that we should deal with health care, that we should deal with education, not one Republican supporting it. Unfortunately, in a Senate that is 50-50, 50 Republicans, 50 people in the Democratic caucus, there were two corporate Democrats who chose not to support what the president and I and the vast majority of the caucus wanted. That's the reality. We had 48 votes. We couldn't get 50. My hope is that we will elect two more Democrats, so we'll have 52 in the Senate so that we can begin to address the long neglected needs of working families. It is just not acceptable that we have more income and wealth inequality today than we've ever had in this country. It's not acceptable that you got 500,000 people who are homeless in America, rents are soaring, and we're not building the kind of low and moderate income housing that we need. We need an agenda that speaks to the needs of working families and not wealthy campaign contributors.
So I left this up here from the Quantum Alchemist because, again, the question was, why should we vote for the party? I mean, Bernie goes into this whole history lesson about what happened and what they did. We're not asking you about that. Jay didn't ask you nothing about the past. He didn't ask you about how it works, like structurally. People know that Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin did not support it. We know that. The question was, why should we vote for the party? And based on what Bernie Sanders just said, that to me was not a convincing statement for people to vote for the party. I don't know. If he was trying to sell the party, he didn't sell it.
Senator Bernie Sanders, always good to hear your views. Please come back. We love having you on. Thank you so much.
I'm actually surprised. Like when I first saw this clip, again, shout out to Case Study because he sits through all of this stuff. But when I first saw this clip, I was actually surprised that Jake Tapper asked that question. I was surprised that came from CNN. Because I just told you, like, if Bernie Sanders was trying to make his case, I don't feel like he made his case. Because those policies that he mentioned that he said the Republicans didn't support, the Democrats didn't support it either. That's the problem. So you didn't make your case. I'm going to go to some of the comments here. But the warning that he had about making Roe number one and not focusing on the economy, that's for real. Send the text. I agree, Sabby, but the Democrats don't care about winning. They just become lobbyists, speakers, etc. This is true. They want to fundraise. Thank you for this super chat, Duncan. Bernie is talking like he's thinking about a 2024 run. Haven't heard this rhetoric from him in a while. Don't fall for it, y'all. He has mentioned that as a possibility. It's laughable to me. Jay says the reason Bernie is worse than a sellout is because he sold us out when we had the numbers to do something. Oh. Jay, that is a really good point. We really did. We really did. Lawrence goes, Bernie is more afraid of the Dems than he is of the Republicans. Boom. Rick, Bernie and progressives equal careerist. Thank you so much for the super chat. Yasim. It truly breaks my heart to see Bernie like this, but you are correct, Sabrina. It's crazy, right? Like, I guess I never would have thought that Bernie would have gone this way. 3 years ago, I never would have thought this, but fool me once, fool me twice. And thank you for this super chat, Duncan. Not Jake pushing back on Bernie from a more left perspective. Ugh, what is happening? Wake me up. I know it was really weird. When I first saw this, I was like, what? And thank you so much for the super chat. Lisa says peace, love, and dove. I think that's dove. Thank you so much for that. I'll take those comments on Rockfin. It's the rock to the fin. It's the rock to the fin. Thank you so much for the tip on Rockfin. Skip M. Thank you so much. Oh, Bernie. I don't know what to say. We're going into our third story. Like I told you guys, I got five stories today. I don't know what happened, but I went there. We're going into our third story. If you haven't heard about this story, hold on to your seats for this one. It's not easy to discuss, but we need to talk about it because more people need to know about what happened to Jaheim McMillan. Now, Jaheim McMillan, 15-year-old boy. He's a boy. And he was killed by the police. Now, I want to read to you the perspective from the police first, and then I want you to hear the perspective that comes from Olamide, I was saying her name wrong, Olamide Lauren, and the witness who was actually there. Because the family is demanding that the police department release the body cam footage, which they have not. And also that Family Dollar store where he was shot at by the police to also release their footage. And if they don't want to release it, what are they trying to hide? So this is the account that comes from the police. Family of teen killed by police deny claim he was armed. Now that's what the family was saying. And you'll see them here with the signs that say justice for Jaheim. Please, the video. So they're asking for the video. The shooting of a Black teenager by police in Gulfport, Mississippi has led to outcry from family members and activists who say the teen was unarmed with his hands up when he was confronted by the police. Make this larger. The teen died days later after being taken off life support. Now, remember these details here because the second version that you're going to hear of this is going to be a little bit different than what you hear here. Police say 15-year-old Jaheim McMillan was armed and refused to drop his weapon when officers fired at him following a foot chase. The hashtag Justice for Jaheim has been trending on social media, with some posting photos of the teen bleeding out while handcuffed on the ground. During the October 6th incident, officers responded to a 911 call about 5 teens waving firearms at passing cars and began chasing one of them. Now, that's according to the police chief. Just remember who this is coming from. The police chief told reporters that one officer observed McMillan was armed and gave orders for him to stop and drop his weapon. So he goes on to say McMillan did not comply. He also claimed that McMillan turned his body and weapon towards the officer. So the officer fired at him. Deborah Stout, she's one of the witnesses, said that she saw McMillan with his hands up. She says she was waiting outside her home for a phone call when she heard the gunshots. Now, you'll hear about that in that clip, so I don't want to go too much into that because I want you to see that from that clip. He goes on to say, family members disagreed with the police, that's the police chief Cooper's claims that Jaheim was armed. If Gulfport Police Department had footage of my little cousin holding a gun, best believe it would have already been released. Now, that's coming from one of the family members. A spokesperson for the Gulfport Police Department declined to comment. Family members of McMillan did not immediately respond to ABC News requests for comment. The Mississippi Attorney General's office has jurisdiction on cases where officers use deadly force. Cooper said during the press conference, he goes on to say the police department is cooperating fully with the AG's investigation and will conduct an internal investigation. Family members also claimed in the Facebook video they were initially barred from entering a hospital in Mobile, Alabama, where the teenager was airlifted following the shooting. The hospital, USA Children and Women's Hospital, did not immediately respond to a request for comment from ABC News. So this was another issue where the family members were trying to visit him in the hospital, and they were told that the hospital told them that they could not come in. The family attained civil rights attorney Ben Crump to represent them Thursday. Crump released the following statement. This child had his whole life ahead of him, but bullets from those officers took all possibility of that away in an instant. While much remains unknown about this case, we fully intend to put pressure on officials in Mississippi until this family gets the answers they need to and deserve. We are calling for officials to release any and all video footage of the incident so that we can see with our own eyes what transpired that night. Now, notice there's a lot missing. It tells you that the police officer shot him. Doesn't tell you where they shot him. And that part is going to be very telling when you hear this part of the story. Because it doesn't tell you also other things that transpired that day. Now, Olamide, this is her wheelhouse. This is what she does, right? She's a public defender. She talks about policing a lot. She posted this on Twitter. And I want you to hear the other version of this story. Because if you haven't heard this, when you hear about where they actually shot him, you might be appalled. So get ready for this. This is the account from Olamide. Listen to this.
I hate to come here and tell you what happened to a 15-year-old black boy named Jaheim McMillan on October 6th, but I have to, because not only is it shameful the way that the police in this country treats black people, but the way that the media and social media are co-conspirators in keeping the messages suppressed, because this child was not only killed on October 6th by Mississippi police, but since then, all the eyewitnesses, his mother, his sister, his family members have had their Facebook accounts restricted so that they can't tell the story. But on October 6th, Jaheim...
Did you hear that part? Even social media is preventing them from telling their version of the story. That's Facebook. This goes back to the censorship too. So you see, it's not just Mark Zuckerberg trying to censor information about Hunter Biden's laptop. It's also Mark Zuckerberg's company trying to censor information about policing.
McMillan, a 15-year-old, went to his Family Dollar down the block from his own house. He walked out. Multiple eyewitnesses have said this. He walked out of the Family Dollar with his hands up when he saw the police. Hands up, nothing in his hands. And they shot that 15-year-old boy in the head and left his body there and handcuffed him. And then when his mother came to the scene, they tried to handcuff his own mother.
They shot him in the head. They shot him in the head. Now, typically, when police officers are shooting a suspect, they aim for the middle of your body, not for your head. So if they shot him in the head, they shot him with the intent to kill. 15 years old. And then they handcuffed his body. They handcuffed him after they shot him in the head. Notice that article that I just read you didn't mention that. I'm pretty sure that's not police protocol to aim for the head.
They shot that child 8 times. 8 times they shot that child. And then when he was put on life support, his mother says that he was removed off of life support without his mother's permission. They shot and killed her child, and they took him off of life support.
So this is another piece that was not mentioned in that article. The article mentions that the family tried to visit him in the hospital and they were told they could not enter. The article mentions that he was on life support and then taken off of life support. But the article doesn't tell you that he was taken off of life support without his mother's permission. I think that's an important part of the story, don't you? And that would also explain why they didn't want them to come into the hospital. This is murder. That is absolutely, there's no, you can't defend that.
And now they're saying that he was armed, despite the fact that multiple eyewitnesses says he was not. Now, conveniently, the Family Dollar that had video footage, had video security footage of what happened, it's gone. Conveniently just erased. And they have...
Well, did you hear that part? All of a sudden, the video footage is gone.
Saying that he was armed, despite the fact that multiple eyewitnesses says he was not. Now, conveniently, the Family Dollar that had video footage, had video security footage of what happened, it's gone. Conveniently just erased. And they haven't released out the body-worn camera footage, and they seem to be refusing to. I just want to give you a warning before this rolls into the next video clip of...
Yes, warning to all of you.
His mother crying, because you need to understand, for context, not only does this woman have to bury her 15-year-old son, but you need to understand that they killed him so close to her house she was able to run down the street where her son was still dead on the floor and handcuffed.
Oh God! Why the fuck did y'all shoot my fucking son in his fucking head? You stupid bitches! You know exactly what the fuck you was doing!
Imagine someone, police officer, shoots your child. I don't know how many of you in the chat have kids, but they shoot your child in the head. And that's with intent to kill. Police are supposed to de-escalate the situation, which they obviously do not escalate the situation. A 15-year-old boy. And I bring this up because of this. I want to keep saying his age. I want to keep saying 15 years old. And the reason being is because oftentimes, especially police officers, people see black men, young black boys, and they see a grown man. And when they see a grown man, a grown black man, they see them as a threat, whether they are or not. There was a question once on Facebook. I'll never forget this. Someone was posting another police brutality video, and they asked the question, why is it that a lot of times white people have no problem with black boys when they're little, when they're toddlers, when they're like 5 years old, when they're like 6 years old? They see them as kids. They have no problem with, they don't have that fear. And they went on to ask this question: when is it do you stop and decide that I am now going to be afraid of black men? There was a woman, there was a long thread, but there was a woman that responded. I'll never forget her response. She said at age 12, just boldly, at age 12, that's when she considers black boys to be a threat. Yes, Bryce.
Understand that I wouldn't even share the video if it wasn't for the fact that his mother has asked that people make this video, that people be aware of her pain and what happened, because the story is being suppressed.
And that's the only reason why I'm showing that part too, because I want you to, because of the fact that she wants people to see that. A lot of times I think people see Black people, particularly, especially Black women, and they think that we don't feel pain or we don't have like emotion or whatever, like that kind of thing. And that's not true. And people seem to have less empathy because they believe that. They believe that we don't feel pain.
Her Facebook account is restricted, so she isn't able to tell the story herself. The same has happened to the other members of her family. So that's why I'm sharing it.
So you say you saw what happened?
So this is a witness here, and I want you to hear what she says.
Saw the cop shoot the guy.
Did he have a gun on him?
I did not see a gun on him.
And the baby was coming out the store. Jaheim was coming out the store.
He was coming out of the store with his
and my
hands
other
up.
son, with his hands up?
With his hands up.
Was he asked for his hands to go up?
Pardon me?
Was he asked to put his hands up?
I did not hear that. I had just pulled in and I saw what happened. I'm having PSTD or whatever you call it, but yes.
So this woman was a witness and noticed that she said that he had his hands up and he did not have a gun. This is an eyewitness account. Sounds a little bit different than the story that the police gave, right? Of course. The police department is going to protect itself, not the person that they killed. And she still has PTSD from this right now because, you know, I who wouldn't after seeing that?
Okay. Do you mind sharing your name?
Pardon me?
What is your name?
Your name?
My name's Deborah Stout.
Deborah
Stone? I don't. Stout.
Stout. Miss Deborah Stout.
Yeah, I talked to, I think, his niece. She was here. She had braids on. And I followed her home because she had a little boy at home.
Okay.
And just to make sure she was home. But yeah, I did see it.
We thank you so much.
I'm so sorry. I will pray. I will pray for y'all.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And dude, can we get your phone number? You can write that down. I'm not going to record that.
Sure.
Record this shit.
Man, look at the little man up there on the ground, man.
Now, this is outside the Family Dollar. Now, this is where this all took place.
By the door, man. The police over there shot the motherfucking child, man. Child had nothing in their hand, man. What type of shit it did, man? What type of shit it did, man?
Nothing, bro.
Man, look, I shot the man in the head,
They
man.
shot him in the head, bro. I'm sitting there right here watching them.
The kid didn't have nothing in his head,
bro.
man.
Six times.
This what the fuck these police out here doing, man. Y'all out here letting these kids run these streets, and this what the fuck going on, man. These motherfucking police doing this shit, man.
That's so sad, man. Then they gonna handcuff him, bro.
Then still got him handcuffed right now.
Handcuffed him.
Got the man handcuffed right now, man.
So they're saying the same thing. He had nothing in his hand. Just shot a kid in the face. By the way, who's reporting this on corporate media? Who's reporting this? Someone just asked me that question. Omar, not hearing about this story on garbage corporate media. I didn't hear about it on corporate media either. Didn't hear about it either. Had it not been for Olimi, like that was where I first heard about it. And then I had to search for it. Omar, no one else is talking about this story besides RBN. Why is that? People have gotten, we've been paying attention. We noticed like a lot of the people who were doing this coverage and these stories about George Floyd, because that was very popular and that was trending at the time. They've been really silent on police issues and police brutality issues that have happened after that. Not even a word.
Man, what type of shit it is, bro? Hey, ma'am, come on. He coming.
I ain't gonna get shot.
Man,
the man shot him.
The shit fucked up.
Yes.
So you have multiple witnesses, not just the woman who was in the car who said she pulled up at the time. There are multiple witnesses that saw this.
Yeah. What's up, bro? Yeah, they shot by 8 times. Cause I heard it over there. I heard it right over there, and I'm like, what the fuck? But I'm still seeing the traffic going. Hello. Man, bro, the police just shot a little dude over here at Family Dollar, man.
Yeah, they shot him.
Yeah. And then they got the man handcuffed over here, man. They done shot the man.
They shot that man for nothing.
Yeah. Man, I don't know.
Shot that man for nothing. Y'all ain't shit, bro.
Shit, y'all can't get mad for something y'all fucked up on. Y'all can't get mad for something y'all fucked up on. Yeah.
Look, I had to pause this here because I want to point out something to you, right? You see this police officer right here, where I'm drawing a kind of a circle around him? Notice that's a black police officer, right? You see that, right? And this is what I've said before. Black police officers are blue first and black second. They will still back the police department, even when cases like this.
Y'all need to be getting on the one who shot that little boy. That's what y'all need to be doing. Hello? Hey, look, don't touch that man, bro.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. He may not be black after all, but the point still stands. And look at the aggression now. Look at the aggression already.
Hey, look, let me call you back. Let me call you back.
What's up, man?
I ain't talking to you.
Okay, back up then.
I ain't in your yelling.
And let's stop calling the media complicit. They're not complicit. They're co-conspirators. Because the police narrative that the media has taken it upon themselves to not only parrot back to us, but to treat as fact is that he was armed and went to this store and was waving his gun at people. But the store manager of his local convenience store where he regularly frequents says that is not what happened. But that story's not getting out. Just like his mother and all of the eyewitnesses' stories are not getting out. Just like you haven't heard about this. Because
see, you heard that? The store manager said that did not happen, that he was not in the store waving his gun around. So once again, we have another case where the police officers, the police department has made up a story. Where have we seen that before? You mean to tell me this 15-year-old little boy came into a Family Dollar, just started waving his gun around, and nobody tried to run out of the store? Nobody saw that, including the store manager?
that's what they do. They allow police to kill people with impunity, and then they cover it the fuck up.
That's right. That's right. Guys, make sure you follow Olamide on Twitter because that's her thing, is like police brutality. She's a public defender. So she talks about this a lot. You can follow her on Twitter at M.
I hate to come here and tell you what happened to a 15-year-old black boy named Jaheim McMillan
I'm sorry, it started playing again. Follow her at M. S. O'Laurin on Twitter. Because honestly, I have to tell you guys, I did not see this on corporate media. Maybe it's out now, but it wasn't at the time when I saw this. Now, if you want to help the family, you can. They do have a GoFundMe here. And this is Jaheim here. Like I said, a 15-year-old boy. Hashtag justice for Jaheim. Their goal is to raise $30,000. It looks like they've raised over $9,940 now. Eric, if you can put the link to the GoFundMe in the chat, because Obviously, you guys know what is going to come along with this is going to be funeral expenses that they may or may not be able to afford. Funeral expenses can be expensive. So please help out the family the best way possible. They're going to need some type of legal protection as well. It looks like they may have a lawsuit here. So if you can donate, please do so. But we have to do something about the police state. And I have another story tomorrow night about the police state too, where they really have gone rambunctious. And I want you to know, when you look at this little boy's face, see this little boy right here, 15 years old, I want you to remember who's funding the police. I want you to remember that your president, Mr. Joe Biden, is giving the police more money. They're complicit. I'm going to go to some of the comments and then we'll go to the next story. Thank you for the super chat, Tron Dine. 48 votes for what? Not Medicare for all, not a living wage. That's right. Nicole, I have children. Youngest is 25. I would burn this world down if he was murdered like that. Painful experience. And then Omar said, not hearing about this on corporate media. Thank you so much for the super sticker, JM. Bad cookies. That boy died before ever confessing his feelings to the girl he was crushing on. That boy will never go to prom. He will never have a child of his own. That is the crime here, not the kid. That's right. They just took his future from him. And someone really, they got the lawyer to help them, but they need to investigate with the hospital as well. Because this idea that the hospital took him off of life support without the approval of the family, that's suspect. I don't even think that's legal. I don't think it is. Send the text says looks younger than 15. Yeah, he looks like a baby. A baby. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. I never thought I'd see the day when CNN would stump Bernie. Wow. Bernie saying Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security in danger of being cut by GOP. This is why I say we need to take every program and service that we receive at the federal level and copy it to the state. Okay, people, time to start pushing these ballot initiatives. Arizona for Medicare for All Coalition needs help. I'm trying to push them to push Arizona ballot initiative. They need help with money, organizing ads, etc. Let's help them. Send me their info, Roger. Thank you for this tip as well. Transfer the power to prosecute cops away from the DA's office, who they depend on, who work with police to help solve cases, to an independent special prosecutor selected by the family and the community with the full might of the state behind them. Also, if police departments or allies are caught trying to threaten the indie prosecutor, then that will be used against them in civil case, in qualified immunity as a backstop in case. Yeah, I agree with that. It's crazy to me when the police department investigates theirself. And thank you for this tip as well. Black police officers are blue first, then black. Sabby, are you talking about cops or the Democratic Party? Oh, both. That go both ways, Roger Meadows. That go both ways, son. All right, we're going into our next story, which is Professor Richard Wolff. You guys know we've been following his economic update. We've been talking about it at least once a week. I said we went into a year with inflation. We're going to do some Wolff. So Professor Richard Wolff, in this video, if you haven't seen this, here we go. There seems to be this argument when people talk about socialism versus capitalism. And the argument that has come up, at least what's discussed in this video, is the fact that there's this saying going around that more people have died from socialism than from capitalism. So Professor Richard Wolff decided to debunk that. So let's go ahead and get into this video.
Many people opposed to socialism, communism, and so on like to use what I call count the deaths arguments. They count deaths and say something like this: Stalin killed millions or 10 million. Many of them do the same exercise with Mao. There's no question that the tumultuous transformations in Russia after 1917 and in China after 1949, those are the days when they changed their society to try to construct some sort of socialism, at least that's what they called it, that these were traumatic transformations. A lot of people died, no question. And if you want to blame that on socialism, I don't understand quite what you're doing there. Social transformations, as I'm about to show you, incur deaths on large numbers, and they always have. But okay, let's do it for a moment. And this time I'm going to ask the question, what about capitalism? If we're going to charge socialism and communism as responsible for the deaths under Stalin and Mao, well, then we have to look at capitalism and ask what? Well, over the last 2 or 3 centuries, how many people died as a result of them in that sense?
So this is an important point, because some people don't like when you do this, by the way. Some people don't like when you say, because I've done this before and I've told people, like, what about all the people that have died under what about all the people that have done this under capitalism? And people are like, I'm not talking about capitalism right now. I'm talking about socialism. Like, I just want you to prove to me why socialism is the worst option. And no one has convinced me that it is, because I've lived under capitalism my whole life. You probably have too, right? How's it been for you? How's it been? And I'm going to use an example that all of us are familiar with, and that's the healthcare system in this country. Again, we don't have healthcare for everyone in the United States. How many people have died under the healthcare system in this country because they don't have health insurance or they have inadequate health insurance? You can just look back recently to the pandemic in reference to that. All the people who didn't have health insurance, who got sick. How many people in this country have died under capitalism, under environmental problems that we have in this country? How many? And I'm talking about people that live in neighborhoods and communities that the life expectancy drops when you go to that community because they don't have clean water. I'm talking about a Flint. I'm talking about a Jackson, Mississippi now. That's all under capitalism, because people who have more money can afford to live in neighborhoods that don't have that problem. There's many other examples you can point to. Many other. But let's hear what else he has to say. Healthcare is the big one, though.
And the answer is, not that it gives me any satisfaction to tell you this, but that the number of dead is much, much larger than we can attribute to Stalin and Mao. To be crude, maybe it's because Stalin and Mao didn't sit for 2 or 3 or 4 centuries. They're much, much younger systems. They haven't had the time yet to perhaps do comparable damage.
That's a good point. And if you think about it, capitalism has been around much, much longer.
But let me give you an example of the first time I encountered this. First book I ever wrote. It's called The Economics of Colonialism. It's about a small country in East Africa known as Kenya. And it touches all of this. The period of my book and my doctoral dissertation covers 1895, when the British take over that area in something called the East Africa Protectorate, and it runs till 1930. The British were in charge that whole time. It was a British colony. When the British arrived, the census they took indicated roughly 4 million African people. In 1930, another time of a census, it was 2.5 million. 1.5 million people vanished, died, as a result, it's easy to show, of the British colonial regime.
And you can connect colonialism to capitalism.
It literally moved the mass of the African population around the country, throwing them out of areas they had lived in for many centuries, because it was useful to grow coffee there. Arabica coffee grew on the highlands in the middle of Kenya. To be sent to England, where there was a big merchant coffee business that took it and distributed it in England, Europe, all over the world, made a lot of money. But to use that good land to have the coffee, you had to get rid of the Africans. And where did you put them? In reserved areas. That's what they were called, reserved. You know, like what we did with the people we called Indians, the indigenous people here, reservations. They did that there too. Cost them millions of lives. It subordinated their economy to the British. You are subordinate people. You're going to get paid nothing. You have no education. You have very little medical care. Your job, live short, work, produce coffee, ship it to England. You may
notice he said, live short. Your job, live short. Have you noticed, if you look at life expectancy, I'm just going to speak from an American perspective. Well, I can do both, I guess. Life expectancy for Americans in the United States, well, here in the United States this year, life expectancy has decreased over the past couple of years for Americans. If you look at life expectancy in some European countries, they have a longer life expectancy. Why is that? Now, it could have something to do with the fact that a lot of those countries have healthcare for everybody. So if you get sick, you can just go to the doctor and not have to worry about the bill. And we have that problem here in this country where I know many people who have been through this, and I went through this before too, many years ago, where someone gets sick and they know they're sick, but they can't go to the doctor because that's going to be like a $200 bill just for walking into the doctor's office. And if they want to do any type of lab work, then you can add that on too. So some people will just tough it out because then you have to deal with the stress of having medical debt. But the life expectancy in the United States has decreased. Now, he mentioned living shorter. And what happens under capitalism, when you are exploited as an employee and you are working probably twice as hard nowadays and twice as hard back then, or 3 times as hard back then, and you're constantly working and you're not getting the rest and you're dealing with the stress and you're not taking care of yourself physically, mentally, or emotionally, what happens? Your body wears down. This is why it's easier for rich people to live longer. It's easier for you to live longer and have a healthier lifestyle if you're rich, because you can afford to have high quality foods. You can afford to eat healthy. Eating healthy is expensive. You can afford those things. You can also afford to have someone take care of some of those stress in your life that working class people have. If you're rich, you can pay someone to clean your house. You can pay someone to cook for you. You don't have to cook dinner. You can pay someone to watch your kids. You can have a nanny. So it removes some of that stress from your life, right? Now, how does that compare in reference to Europe? And some of these European countries, even if you're not rich, they have policies in place that gets rid of some of that stress for you. If you're living in some of these countries where they have healthcare for everybody, you don't have to stress about that medical bill. If you're living in some of these countries where when they say you have a break and it's like a 2-hour, 3-hour break, like a siesta, you actually get a real break. You can go home and take a nap. When they say you have vacation, your vacation is like a real vacation where you get to go on vacation and you're gone for a month, not a week or a weekend. And this is why they have a longer life expectancy than we do, because they don't have to stress about some of the same things that we do in this country. But if you're working hard like that constantly, yes, you will live shorter. And the employer will just replace you with someone else. You're basically a robot to them. You're just a machine, someone that they can use to do the labor. And then when you're done, they spit you out and they put someone else in your spot. If you don't believe me, why do you think all these companies in the United States have to have this phrase now where they say work-life balance? Crazy stuff.
I do not like this story, and it may upset you in terms of Queen Elizabeth, but she was the monarch presiding over all of this. So it should come as no surprise that in 1953, a year after she becomes queen, Kenya erupts with a revolution. It was called the Mau Mau Revolt. If we can talk about millions in that little corner of the empire, imagine if we had a census. No more would you hear death count be the way of comparing capitalism and socialism and communism. Socialism and communism may catch up, and they will be criticized if they do, but they have a long way to go to catch up to the murder that is the mass murder that is part of the evolution of colonialism as the extension of capitalism.
There you go. Now he has a part 2. Where did it go? He has a part 2 here. I'm not going to play this tonight, but if you want to see this part 2, this is the one that came up with this next recommended video. It's called Economic Update, The Economics of Colonialism Part 2, the Neo-Colonialism Variation. So you can check that out as well. But the point is that Richard Wolff here is spot on in the sense that we hear that talking point often. People die under socialism. You're going to lose everything under socialism. I mean, tell that to people who are poor, who don't have much to begin with anyway. If you go say that to someone who's poor, who doesn't have much to lose, they might be like, what am I losing? Give it a chance. People like to make a lot of criticisms about Cuba as well. We've talked about this on RBN, but if you look at the comparisons, and not to say there aren't issues with Cuba, but if you look at the comparisons, they're living longer than we are. They have healthcare for everyone. I wonder if there's a connection. So when people give you that talking point, just break it down. And like I said, I talk about it in reference to what's happening like right now, like current issues, like with capitalism. Look how many people are dying because of poverty in the United States, because they don't have health care, because they don't have enough food to eat, because they don't have a place to live. They don't have shelter. Look how many people in this country are dying because of police brutality. We just talked about another issue, another story earlier in tonight, excuse me. So there are so many different things like under capitalism that has constantly been killing American people for decades in this country, possibly for centuries in this country. But people still want to fight back against even trying to have socialism. When you've been living under capitalism all these years and your life is still a struggle. Just something to think about. Thank you for the super chat, The Traveler. Like Sabby, the CIA has even said socialist countries had a higher caloric intake in their counterparts and the poverty stat. If you take China out of that, global poverty has been going up. Thank you for that, The Traveler. Thank you for the super sticker, JM. David B. Sabby, are you going to cover the new AOC response to the video where the protesters yelled at her? I already talked about that in the video where I talked about the protest. I already talked about that. But about what she tweeted out. But if you're referring to the response that I think Aaron Mate had shared on Twitter just a couple minutes ago, I think RBN is going to cover that. I think CJ or Nick's going to cover that on RBN. So Check out RBN to check that out over there. He'll probably cover that tomorrow, if I remember correctly. But yeah, she's ridiculous. She's such a liar. She's such a freaking liar. All right, we're going into our final story tonight. And this one involves the poll. So Eric, let me know when you have the poll results up. Guys, if you didn't get a chance to do so, make sure you take that poll. So something different is happening in the City of Angels. They are implementing a pilot UBI program. I'm going to show you the article, and I'm going to show you some of the criticism it's already receiving from people. But check this out. Young adults in LA to get $1,000 a month under new guaranteed income program. Now, this is similar to what Andrew Yang was talking about, $1,000 a month, UBI for all Americans. This is the LA Times. A new program in LA County is offering universal basic income with $1,000 monthly payments to a select group of young adults. The LA County Department of Public Social Services introduced the pilot program, which will provide a 3-year guaranteed income for about 300 people ages 18 to 24. So this group right here, 300 people 18 to 24. I will say I wish this didn't have an age limit on it. I just want to say that. But the idea, I think, is to help out younger people because a lot of the younger people are struggling financially to the point where, because of the way things are with the economy and student loan debt, less likely to be able to buy a home, less likely to be able to have any type of property. So that's probably why they target that group. Recipients will be randomly selected to receive monthly payments according to a news release from LA County Supervisor Hilda Solis. Those eligible must be currently enrolled in the General Relief Opportunities for Work or GROW program, which provides employment and training services for young adults who face employment and educational barriers and often come from vulnerable backgrounds, including being unhoused or unsheltered. So again, similar to the pilot program they talked about doing in Denver, they are targeting that particular group, people who might be unhoused or unsheltered. These young people had to develop personal strength and resilience to overcome so many challenges in their lives. Much like all of us, they just need an opportunity to put their talents and abilities to work. Offering guaranteed income could very well be the key to unlocking their full potential. The program launched August 31st, according to a spokesperson from Solis' office. Earlier this year, I'm going to make this bigger, I'm sorry. Yeah. Earlier this year, LA County rolled out Breathe, another experimental program providing cash assistance of $1,000 per month to county residents 18 and older in poor or working class neighborhoods who were hurt financially during the pandemic. Residents had to apply to Breathe, which is funded with federal pandemic relief money and conducted in partnership with the nonprofit Strength-Based Community Change of Wilmington and the University of Pennsylvania Center for Guaranteed Income Research. Now, I'm going to jump in and say something really quickly. I will say the idea of UBI, I get that it's a pilot program, but the whole idea is that it's not supposed to be means tested. So that's the thing that Andrew Yang was really like big on, was like, don't means test it. Just give it to everybody. So it seems like they're means testing this with a certain demographic, right? Age group. And also with people who are working class and people who are poor. And I have nothing against them doing that, but it kind of does take away from what universal basic income means, which is you're supposed to give it to, it's universal. It's supposed to go to everybody. So maybe this will change depending on how the pilot program does, but that's where it's at right now. Now, it said last year, LA became the biggest city in the nation to launch a $1,000 a month cash assistance program. and 3,200 Los Angeles households were randomly selected for the initiative by the city's research partner, the Center for Guaranteed Income Research. So that's happening in LA. And I want to show you the response. And I can't wait to check out this poll results as well. Now, shout out to Case Study QB, because he actually got a response about this from Sean Hannity, or he captured a response about this from Sean Hannity about this basic income program. And I want to hear if you guys may feel the same way. So listen to what Sean Hannity had to say about a UBI in LA. And I didn't mean to rhyme there.
City announced they will now begin a guaranteed basic income program and give $1,000 to select residents every month for the next 3 years, like winning the lotto. Anyway, let me be clear. That is socialism, and not a single one of these recipients did a thing to earn the money.
Okay, let me stop him right there for just a second, because I do want to say this part. Notice how he didn't tell you as much as I just told you. Notice how he didn't tell you what the age group was. Notice how he didn't tell, he just said a specific group, and he said this is socialism, and they didn't do anything to earn it. So does Sean Hannity think that the UBI that's given to residents in Alaska, by the way, for those who don't know, residents in Alaska also get like a UBI. It actually comes from the oil companies where they get a check. I think it's yearly. Last time I checked, that was yearly, but they also get a check, and it's given to everyone. Now, Alaska is a conservative state. Is Sean Hannity going to say that what's happening in Alaska, that's socialism too? I don't think so. I don't think so.
This should worry every American, not just people in California, because as the saying goes, as goes California, so goes the nation. So will we see other far left cities and states now follow their lead and implement their own socialist agenda? Here with reaction, Fox News contributor Leo 2.0 Terrell. And
this guy always looks miserable. I've seen him on here before. He always looks miserable and angry. And second of all, this is how you can tell this isn't really news. Sean Hannity didn't do his research. This is not the first city to do this. I told you guys a couple weeks ago, Denver had already started a pilot program for UBI as well.
The co-host of the hit show, The Five, Jessica Tarlov, is back with us. Jessica, we have $31 trillion in debt right now. We now have the average family suffering under Biden inflation policies, the worst inflation in 41 years. It's costing them, on average, $7,200 a year. We have the highest gas prices we've ever had as a country, and as I predicted, they're going back up. Can you tell me who's going to pay for all this free money that they're going to be distributing?
Pause. Joe Biden is the president of the United States. He's not the mayor of LA. This is a local initiative. If anything, this is coming from state funds, not federal funds. My tax dollars, your tax dollars are not going to this pilot program in LA. And most likely, if it's similar to the one I read about in Denver, most likely it's not coming from LA taxpayers either. So what Thank you, Jessica. Does LA have to pay the debt for the rest of the country? Like, what is he talking about? Wow. I can't believe people actually watch this and believe this.
Well, the state of California is going to pay for it. They have a $97.5 billion surplus, and about half of that Governor Gavin Newsom can use at his discretion for programs like this, which actually I'm not a universal basic income person, but this is pretty interesting.
I really don't like how he talks over people. And I know I said this before, but it's really freaking annoying. When you have guests come on your show, let them finish what they're saying.
The people, right?
Yes, it does. Well, taxpayers, sure, but they are paying those taxes. They're choosing to live in California, and I know I heard that, everyone's left LA. They haven't left LA, and they're continuing to pay taxes.
Why is it fair to take money, to empower government to confiscate money from one group of people and give it to a favored group of people Wouldn't that couldn't that be viewed as an attempt at buying people's favor and votes?
But you're okay with that happening with police departments, though, because you're okay with the government taking tax dollars and giving it to the police department, and politicians buy votes from the police department as well. They also get funding from police departments. So what's the difference? This is the thing that kind of kills me with conservatives. And some of my friends are conservative as well. And I still pick on them about this as well. When you say that you're against big government, but you approve of funding the police and the police state, then you're not really against big government. Does that make any sense? So he's okay with them giving money to fund the police. He's just not okay with them giving money to people to help their lives. Ay.
People put folks in office that they agree with their policies. Gavin Newsom believes that you should tax people at a fair rate. Some people think it's higher than what is fair, but that's a system. I live in New York. We have a very high tax rate. Do I support it? Do I support rich people paying higher taxes? Yeah, absolutely. But can I say something about the program itself? Because it's actually pretty innovative.
Do you support the government empowering your government to take money from one group of people and give a guaranteed income to another group of people? Do you support that?
I support paying taxes and then the government deciding to fund a program like this.
Jessica.
What is the deal with her voice? Do they purposely bring people on here that their viewers can just sit back and mock? And the way that Sean Hannity frames like these leftist like policies is problematic. Like, I don't understand how anyone can watch this show and thinks that honestly think that he's like just telling them the truth, to be honest with you. I don't understand how anyone can believe this guy.
Do you support empowering your government to take money from one group of people and handing it to another group of people? Do you support that?
But Sean Hannity, you support the government doing that when it comes to the police state. You support your government taking money from taxpayers and funding the police. So what are you talking about?
Yes, I support it. It is reallocating dollars that I'm going to pay in taxes.
Thank you. Oh, come on. I mean, can I have a chance, please?
Yes.
Look, first of all, the state of California does not generate income. Who pays for this? I paid for it. And I didn't vote for this type of free money distribution. And let's be very clear. Look at the standards. I read the policy. Educationally disadvantaged, troubling neighborhoods. That sounds like an equity-based program based on what you look like and who you are. And it's free money. We just gave away $4 trillion, and it's a disincentive. But I want to be very clear about this. This is a backdoor reparation plan. It is a plan to get...
What you just said doesn't make any sense. A backdoor reparations plan? If it was a reparations plan, it wouldn't be limited to 18 to 24-year-olds. If it was a reparations plan, it would be given to African Americans only. They're not just giving it to African Americans. It's not just African Americans that live in those disadvantaged communities in California, in Los Angeles. The African American population in Los Angeles is not as high as you would think it is. Look it up. Look up the numbers. This guy, like, he drives me crazy. And I've seen him on here before, and I'm just like, this guy is ridiculous.
Give certain people money at the expense of others. It's unconstitutional. It's a violation of equal protection. And I'll tell you right now, here's an alternative. Instead of giving free money, go get a job. Go get a job.
Wow. Wow. See, now they're going to try to make it seem like these individuals who are receiving this UBI don't want to work. They're just lazy people who don't want to work. And so the state is giving them money.
Don't rely on the government to feed you. And you know what, Sean? This $1,000, they could do whatever they want with this money. Meaning
that people that work jobs and get paychecks can do whatever they want with that money. What's the difference, Leo? If you work at McDonald's or you work at Target and you get paid, you can do what you want with that money. Now, if you're not using it the way that you're supposed to, does that mean that you may not pay your rent and you could get evicted? Does that mean that you may end up not having food to eat if you're not spending your money on food? Absolutely. But it's your money. You can do what you want with that money too. So what's the difference, Leo? Wow.
If they don't have to put it towards education or helping themselves, they could blow it on anything. Use your imagination. This is a...
So now we're supposed to watch what people spend their money on? They're not going to use it on education. What can you do with $1,000 towards higher education? And remember, I worked in higher ed, went to undergrad and I went to grad school. $1,000 is not going to do much for you today in reference to higher education. So what the fuck is he talking about?
Dependency program, which the state of California, which is a socialist state and which was not approved by the taxpayer.
Now California is a socialist state. The same state who had the opportunity to pass Medicare for all, to pass universal health care, and they did not pass it. They decided not to bring it to the floor for a vote. But it's a socialist state. We've gone this far now. Okay.
But to keep people dependent on government, keep people dependent on a democratic socialist program. That's all this is.
Again, the money that people receive in the state of Alaska that is given to everyone because of the oil companies, is Leo and Sean Hannity going to call Alaska a socialist state? She's got to push back harder on this. She really does.
Jessica, you get the final 20 seconds.
Fantastic. There are no socialist states in the United States of America, not a single one, and certainly not California. This program targets 18 to 24-year-olds,
Jessica,
most of them who are homeless, by the way, are probably... No, this is important. 20 seconds. It is not socialism. Socialism is what happens in Venezuela. Socialism is what happens in China. Socialism is what happens in Russia. This is what... These are 300 kids, 18 to 24-year-olds old, most of them homeless, who are already in a job training program, Leo. I guess you didn't read the article thoroughly enough, right? So this is going to give them a job for the next 3 years to take them. No, you didn't.
Terrible. All of them. Terrible. So she gets the little bit of seconds at the end. He doesn't interrupt Leo 2.0 here. Interrupts her the first time she's speaking multiple times so you can barely hear what she's saying. And they all need to learn the definition of socialism too. They need to learn about workers controlling the means of the production. And they never explain it that way. They always point to Venezuela. California is a socialist state now. Okay. I've heard it all, but I want to hear what you guys had to say. Let's see. How did you feel about this particular issue? Okay, you guys have voted. Do you agree with cities implementing universal basic income pilot programs? 67% of you said yes. 11% said no. And 22% of you said not sure. That's a pretty decent poll. Well, the results are pretty decent. Usually my polls are like one extreme. Usually it's like 80% this way or something like that. But this is pretty decent. Like 22% of you let me know, like, you're really not sure, like, how, if you want that or not. And then 11% said no, 67% said yes. So pretty decent, guys. Pretty decent. And I guess there's more context that can be added to that as well. Like, Yes, in the sense that it won't cut other programs. For example, like the state won't come in and cut SNAP benefits or cut other welfare benefits, things like that. That could also be a possibility too, if they just keep those things the same. There's so many different things that can go along with this, you know? I'll take those comments on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip, Roger Meadows. When capitalists push back, notice they never speak on the socialist programs they do like. Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, etc., or voters and GOP politicians in North Dakota regarding their public bank. They never recognized it as socialism. They call it a public good. People, if you want a socialist takeover, it must be done policy by policy, ballot initiative by ballot initiative. Let them enjoy each one, because one day they'll say, not socialism, but public good. I kind of like that phrasing too there, Roger. Thank you for this tip as well. Sab, you haven't lived under capitalism all your life. You lived in Germany. Oh, yeah, that's true. But Germany isn't socialist. Yes, Sean, I support Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 of the Constitution that says Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debt and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States, but all duties, imposts, and excises should be uniform throughout the United States. Cools. And I think there's one more. And thank you for this tip as well. The preamble says, we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Thank you so much for that, Roger. Also, if you're Uber driving right now, how in the world do you remember all that off the top of your head? I'm just curious. And thank you for this tip as well. Also, Sabby, apparently Alaskans can have a lot of fun. I picked a group of 4 customers who were from there, who live here now, and all kept talking about was sex. I said, is all you do in Alaska is fun? They said, well, there is nothing else to do, and plus it is cold, so what else? I can't. Okay. What's like what 6 months of the year in Alaska is somewhat dark, right? Like maybe not like pitch dark, but it's somewhat dark. And then the other 6 months is like daylight or something like that. So I guess it could get a little, that was more than I wanted to know. Okay. Let me make sure I get the comments here. Lawrence, still waiting for the final 600 of my STEMI. Yeah, I know. Some people didn't get that one. Some people told me that. Bill Bradley, socialism about who has control, not social programs. Lawrence says, why do I have to pay for socialist schools that I don't use, socialist roads that I don't use? Allie, Hannity is more infuriating than Tucker, and that's saying something. Yeah, like I don't get it. I don't understand why people like watching him. Where Comrade Newsom, LOL. Yipper99, the military is a socialist program. Ooh, Yipper, you went there. Omar, Hannity's shtick is to cut people off and be rude to them if he disagrees with them. Yeah, I don't understand why people want to watch that, though. I don't like it when I can't hear what they're saying. Send the text. We have socialism for corporations. Bingo. Duckzilla, I voted no, a UBI should be a federal thing. And that's another example. Another thing, way you could have looked at it too, like, well, no, I don't agree with cities doing it. I think it should be federal. Well. All right, guys, cool show tomorrow night. Dan Cohen's going to be here. We're going to talk about the U.S. planning to intervene in Haiti. I was fortunate to meet him at the Julian Assange March in DC. So I got to meet him in person. So he's going to come on and talk about that. He's covered a lot in Haiti. He's been on the ground there. So we're going to dive into that as well. And more news stories. There's a lot of guests that are going to be coming on throughout the week. The Green Party ladies are going to be here Friday night. Diane Sayre is going to be here. I believe that's next week. God, who else is coming? Gloria Cabello, she will be here next week also as well. There's a lot of people coming. So a lot going on. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. This was a particular long stream. I will not have 5 stories tomorrow night, but it was so much I wanted to cover. But that's right, guys. So I hope you enjoyed the show. I am heading out. Tune in tomorrow. Should be very educational and informative. And you have to ask yourself, when we say hands off Haiti, what exactly does that really mean? Well, Dan Cohen's going to break that down tomorrow night. So guys, you know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.